sixth chapter, the liberation. When we think about the religious and spiritual fields, it is inevitable to think about supernatural powers. We have many life accounts of many saints who did so many miracles in their lives. What's all that? Our deeper conscious mind has many mysteries. We may enter into a deeper conscious mind through our meditational and yogic practices. Then we can handle such kind of mysterious powers. By handling of such powers does not prove that one is enlightened. Enlightenment is different. The enlightened person may or may not have such mysterious powers, but basically he is free from everything. There is no necessity for him to have such marvelous powers. He is simply flowing with his life without searching for an end. So everything flows itself according to him. Have you ever heard about the story of the hunter of treasure? It is a lovely story available in the spiritual field. Once, a hunter was wandering in a forest with some vague idea that there were many treasures in the forest. While searching for the treasures in the forest, he met a saint under a tree. He asked the saint whether he had any knowledge about any treasure in the forest. The saint at once told him about the location of some treasure. The hunter followed the way and found out a treasure of silver. When he returned to the saint for expressing his gratitude, the saint told him the way for a golden treasure also. The hunter found out the golden treasure. Afterwards, the saint told him the way to a diamond treasure. The hunter found out all the treasures by the guidance of the saint. After finding out all the treasures, the hunter was struck with a question about the saint who showed him all the treasures. He asked the saint that even though he had the knowledge about all those treasures, why he did not take the treasures for himself. The saint laughed at once and told him that he had some other treasure with him that was much more valuable than all the other treasures shown to the hunter. The saint told him that liberation was the greatest treasure when compared to the objects either in the earth or in the heaven. Liberation is the highest one in the spiritual field. The occult powers and the other spiritual experiences are nothing before this liberation. The occult powers and such other spiritual experiences may be considered as a great attainment and an achievement in the spiritual field. It is really true that they are really attainments, but liberation is not an attainment. It is rather a freedom from everything. Such freedom is not an attainment. It is a freedom from all attainments, whether they may be of the earth or of the heaven. In liberation, everything flows. The I consciousness itself is a flow from one's subconscious mind to the conscious mind. The I consciousness itself is a flow. It subsides during our sleep. It flows only when we are awake. The I consciousness is not a static one. It is also flowing like other feelings. The I consciousness is nothing but our thought. Our thought is present only when we are awake and in dreams. Since thought is absent in our dreamless sleep, the I consciousness is also absent in our deep sleep. There is no I consciousness apart from our thought. When we feel ourselves liberated, the flow of our I consciousness will also become unimportant. we will allow it to come and go as other feelings. We will not be attached to anything, including our I consciousness. It is not our imagination, it is our actuality. Once you feel yourselves liberated, easily you will get the feeling that you are not anything in particular. Everything comes and goes according to the circumstances where one happens to be existing. The person who possesses something is called a possessor. A possessor is always controlled by the thing which he possesses. It is natural. When we possess anything, we do not possess them. Actually, they only possess us. There is a human story. Two friends, while standing by a riverside, saw a bundle floating on the recent flood of the river. They did not know the nature of the bundle and its contents, since it was floating somewhat away from them. One of them, who was good at swimming, jumped into the river and reached the bundle with great effort. When he touched the bundle, he came to know that it was not a bundle but a wild bear caught in the flood. The bear at once grasped him for its escape from the flood. He was unable to swim and he was staggering and struggling. The friend at the banks shouted at him, "Leave the bundle if you are unable to bring it to the banks." But he shouted back, "I am not holding the bundle, but the bundle only is holding me." Actually, possession creates the possessor. If I am attached to my pleasure and happiness, they create me as a possessor in a positive way. If I struggle against my sorrow, I am attached to my sorrow negatively. The negative attachment also creates me as a possessor. A possessor is so powerful to the extent of his attachment. If his attachment is powerless and weak, the possessor would also be powerless and flimsy. The possessor is our I consciousness. As every consciousness is flowing, the I consciousness is also flowing. When the I consciousness possesses anything, it becomes the possessor. The I consciousness can flow freely and easily, but the possessor cannot. When it becomes the possessor, it is unable to flow. It gets a vicious circle of consciousness around itself. Until there is the possessor, there will not be any regular flow of our consciousness. We have to be clear with ourselves that the I consciousness is not an obstacle for the flow of consciousness, but it will be an obstacle if it becomes the possessor. So we have to dissolve only the possessor alone, and we need not dissolve the I consciousness. Moreover, it is impossible to dissolve the I consciousness. Whenever there is consciousness, there would be I consciousness. We cannot separate the I consciousness from the consciousness. What all we can do is to dissolve the possessor into mere I consciousness. Then, how can we dissolve the possessor into mere I consciousness? Now, we have to look into the nature and the formation of the possessor. When I want to remove my sorrow by my demand, I possess the sorrow negatively. In the same way, if I want to retain my pleasure by my demand, I possess the pleasure positively. So, the possessor presupposes a demand for something. The something means that sorrow should not proceed to in the future. It means that I must have a consciousness which is free from sorrow. It also means that I must have a consciousness of pleasure extended to the future. So, the demand for a future consciousness is the base of all possessors. The possessor itself is the demand for the future. As we have seen, the future may be a sorrow-free state or a pleasure-continuing state. But future demand is a must for the existence of possessor. If we demand a possessor-free state, then it is also a demand for a future state. It will again give more strength to the possessor. So we cannot demand the possessor-free state itself. We have seen that the origin of the possessor is the demand for a certain type of consciousness for the future. It may be either in the positive way or in the negative way. Everyone wants to be free from sorrow and suffering. It is the nature of everyone else. It is the nature of suffering. The feeling of pain itself activates the desire for the freedom from pain. In the same way, the feeling of pleasure itself activates the desire for more pleasure. So, the desire is natural and spontaneous. So, the formation of the possessor itself is a natural one, a spontaneous one. So, anything that comes spontaneously will also fade away spontaneously. We need not worry about the disappearance or appearance of the possessor, because such worry itself will give life and strength to the possessor. So the reaction that is sorrow is natural. The reaction to a reaction that is fighting against sorrow is also natural, spontaneous, and automatic. It is our nature to fight against sorrow. We are unconsciously fighting against sorrow. We cannot control it, and we need not control it. If we are able to take it as our natural state, we are absolutely free from the future demand. When there is no willful demand for the future, everything flows along like a sacred river. It purifies itself while it is flowing in its own way. If we want to eliminate the possessor, it is nothing but inviting trouble. But if we allow everything to flow, everything including the possessor, get itself purified, the divine law of purification governs everything. When the conscious mind becomes silent and no longer agitating against consciousness, the subconscious mind and the deeper conscious mind render their help for the purification of consciousness. So the purification happens without our conscious effort. Our deeper conscious mind is always willing to help our consciousness. We have not brought forth the possessor by our intention. The formation of the possessor is unintentional. So we need not take any responsibility to clear it off. If we make it as an unintentional natural flow, it will also flow like other things. So the possessor becomes a flower. The flower cannot be considered as the possessor. The possessor dissolves into a flower. Flower means a person who is flowing, or means a personality which is flowing. So we feel no responsibility upon anything. We allow everything to flow. The legitimate irresponsibility is the liberation. It is enlightenment. If we do not possess anything psychologically, we are free from everything. Whatever comes in the natural course flows in the natural course and will also end in the natural course. Since we are free from everything, we do not in any way interfere with the course of action by our personal likes or dislikes. So, a liberated person has no attachment to possess any miraculous power. One may attain such power by one's will and effort. If anyone sincerely feels it is a necessary thing for one's life, he may direct his attention towards it. But liberation has nothing to do with miracles and miraculous powers. What is the relationship between liberation and the purification of mind? Everyone thinks that liberation comes only after the purification of mind. We think that we must purify our mind and heart. We think that we must eliminate all our bad qualities from our mind and heart. We think we can get liberation then only. Since we were taught like that, we are also thinking like that. But the fact is quite opposite. Purification dawns only on our liberation. The liberated mind purifies itself in the course of its daily life. We cannot get such purification before our liberation, because the effort to purify ourselves is not the way to purification. Purification comes only after our liberation. Liberation can come and must come before the purification of mind, and it does come before such purification. This can be well understood from the following example. We know the system of changing a train from one track to another. There is a bypass from one railway line to the other. When the bypass is opened from one line to the other, the engine of a train moves from one track to the next through the bypass. Even after the engine entered the next track, the remaining carriages of the train will be on the old track. But it will be so for the time being only. When the engine moves along, the carriages will also get into the new track in the course of time. If the engine enters the new track, the total track shall be considered as the new track, even though the carriages have not crossed the bypass. The same thing happens in the case of liberation also. We can get liberation at any time. After liberation, our conscious and subconscious minds will also enter into a different dimension in the course of time. It is a natural and normal course. Everything will happen by itself. We need not endeavor to purify our mind and our character. Liberation is enough for everything. At the occurrence of such liberation, our mind and character will blossom by themselves. When all the petals of a bud blossom, the fragrance may be sensed by all. But once one is liberated, as the engine enters the next track, everything is over to the spiritual aspirant. The rest will follow automatically without one's will and effort. The quality of a liberation may not be visible to others at the beginning, but it will not be a matter to us. Once we feel the liberation for ourselves, we will also feel that we do not want anything more or even the recognition from others. We may or may not acquire some miraculous powers in the course of our remaining life, but we will not have such powers for our satisfaction. When we have the liberation, it is not only the beginning but also the end. Liberation is not an experience. It is rather the freedom from all our experiences. All our experiences come and go in a mechanical process. Such mechanical process gets life when we are attached to it. We give life to a dead thing only by our attachment to it. If we allow them to come and go without choice of our likes and dislikes, they function as a necessary process of the mind. By taking it to the mechanical process, we feel ourselves liberated. Suppose we are traveling in a train with our baby. The train does not move even after the scheduled time. The baby is asking repeatedly, "When will the train go?" We try to satisfy the child. We simply say, "Push the train, it will move." The baby believes our word and pushes the train with all its strength, standing upon the seat. The train also moves at once. The baby is very happy as it believes that the train is moving only because of its effort of pushing the train with its hands. We are also encouraging it, "Don't give up pushing." Soon we reach the next railway station. We ask the child, "Don't push. Let us see what the station is." The child stops pushing the train and the train also stops at the station. We again ask the child to push the train. The baby once again starts pushing the train and the train also moves. But during the course of the time, the baby understands that the train moves by itself and not because of its effort. In the same way, when we understand that our mind also functions on its own way according to its nature, unconsciously as a mechanical process, we are liberated from the grip and clutches of the mind. Even though liberation is very simple in our life, it must be confirmed either by ourselves or by an enlightened soul. Then only it can be called the liberation. Dear friends, thanks very much for listening to what is said about enlightenment. Let us be sure that mere intellectual understanding of what enlightenment is itself enough for your liberation. All the best.